the Samar Campaign, on the 8th of December 1901 on Samar Island in the Philippines, while the Philippine American War is dragging on. A brutal conflict emerged that most Americans didn't even know existed. Filipino guerrillas launch a surprise raid on a US infantry garrison in the town of Balangiga, resulting in the loss of 48 American soldiers in intense close-quarters combat. The Pentagon sends in General Jacob Smith to retaliate. His nickname, Hell-Roaring Jake, 60 years old and absolutely furious. He calls Major Littleton Waller and hands down a terrifying verbal and written order. I want no prisoners. I wish you to kill and burn. The more you kill and burn, the better it will please me. Then he adds the detail that seals his legacy. Kill everyone over 10 years old capable of bearing arms. Waller writes it down. Make the interior of Samar a howling wilderness. Waller's Marines march into the interior, burning down 255 homes in just 11 days. To starve the population, they set up total food blockades, destroy crops, and destroy native carabaos to crush the island's farming. Between 2,000 and 5,000 civilians die from executions, disease, and starvation. During a grueling trek through the dense jungle, starvation and fever pushed the Marines to the brink. Suspecting his native Filipino carriers of mutiny, Major Waller orders his men to line up 11 of the guides and summarily execute them without a trial. The executions spark a massive scandal. Waller is court-martialed for murder, but he exposes General Smith's orders to target everyone over 10. Waller is acquitted. Therefore, the army puts General Smith on trial. They don't charge him with murder, only conduct to the prejudice of good order. The verdict, guilty. The punishment, a simple letter of reprimand and early retirement. No prison time, no execution. The Senate holds hearings exposing systematic water cure, torture, but the case is quickly swept under the rug. No Gun Ri Massacre. On the 26th of July 1950, during the opening weeks of the Korean War, North Korean forces pushed rapidly south, forcing hundreds of thousands of terrified refugees to flee down dusty roads. Fearing that enemy soldiers were hiding in peasant clothes, US commanders issued a brutal order to the 7th Cavalry Regiment. Consider all civilians on the battlefield as unfriendly. Fire on all refugees trying to cross our lines. Near the village of No Gun Ri, American soldiers stopped hundreds of fleeing families on a railroad track. Suddenly, US warplanes dive-bombed and strafed them, killing dozens on the spot. Survivors scrambled for cover, running into the dark tunnels under a massive concrete railroad bridge. The bridge quickly became a deadly trap. For 3 straight days, American soldiers pinned the refugees inside, firing heavy machine guns, rifles, and mortars directly into the tunnels. Between 250 and 300 civilians, mostly women, children, and the elderly, were killed. Survivors stacked the bodies of their dead relatives to shield themselves from the constant gunfire, remembering the sheer scale of the devastation. For 50 years, the US government completely denied the massacre, forcing surviving veterans to carry the horrific memory in silence. But in 1999, an Associated Press investigation exposed the truth. Journalists tracked down the veterans who manned the machine guns. One veteran finally broke his silence, admitting, "We just annihilated them." Facing public outrage, the Pentagon launched an official review in 2001. They confirmed the massacre happened, but refused to call it a war crime. Instead, they labeled the slaughter an unfortunate tragedy of war. The official report claimed the orders to shoot refugees came from unidentified commanders. No one was prosecuted, no one was demoted, and no one went to trial. The US government refused to offer financial compensation to the survivors or the victims' families, and the case was permanently closed. Operation Speedy Express. In December 1968, the US Army's 9th Infantry Division launched a massive campaign in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. The commander, Major General Julian Ewell, was obsessed with a single metric: body counts. Ewell, later nicknamed the Butcher of the Delta by his own troops, tied officer promotions directly to their kill numbers. Under this relentless pressure, commanders who failed to produce high body counts were publicly humiliated and demoted. To satisfy Ewell, US forces began firing at anything that moved. During night sweeps, helicopter crews used infrared lights and people sniffers, devices designed to detect the chemical traces of human sweat. Gunships opened fire on any heat signatures or moving figures in the fields. Huge provinces were declared free fire zones, meaning anyone caught outside after dark was immediately targeted by napalm, heavy artillery, and B-52 carpet bombing. US soldiers even forced local Vietnamese villagers at gunpoint to clear active minefields with simple hand tools to protect American armored vehicles. In 6 months, the division claimed a spectacular victory, reporting 10,889 enemy combatants killed, but they only recovered 748 weapons. That meant 14 bodies were counted for every single gun found. Standard combat typically yielded a 1-to-1 ratio. To cover up the mass casualties of unarmed civilians, infantry commanders systematically ordered soldiers to plant captured weapons on dead farmers. In 1970, a highly decorated veteran named George Lewis sent a 10-page letter to the Army Chief of Staff. He described the operation as a my lie each month for over a year, detailing how gunships targeted unarmed farmers and hit fleeing women and children. 2 Newsweek journalists spent months traveling through the Delta confirming the systematic massacres, but Newsweek editors, terrified of backlash from the Nixon administration, delayed and gutted the expose, reducing it to a minor article that failed to gain national traction. Weeks later, one of the lead journalists, Alexander Alexander Shimkin, was killed by mortar fire. Panicked by the leak, the Pentagon conducted a secret internal review. The classified report admitted that US forces had likely killed between 5,000 and 7,000 innocent civilians. Yet, the report was buried. No charges were ever filed, and no one was court-martialed. Instead, General Ewell was promoted to Lieutenant General and sent to Paris to lead the peace talks. Abu Ghraib torture scandal. In April 2004, shocking photographs leaked from the Abu Ghraib military prison in Iraq. The images exposed systematic physical and psychological abuse of Iraqi detainees by American soldiers. The leaked photos showed detainees stripped of dignity, forced onto leashes, and subjected to extreme psychological degradation. One iconic image showed a hooded man standing on a cardboard box with electrical wires attached to his fingers. He was told that if he fell off, he would be instantly electrocuted. The White House publicly called the abuse un-American and blamed it on a few low-ranking rogue soldiers. But the actions were not random. They were legally authorized. In 2002, lawyers in the Pentagon's Office of Legal Counsel drafted what are now called the Torture Memos. Signed by John Yoo and Jay Bybee, these memos legally redefined torture. They ruled that enhanced interrogation techniques, including waterboarding, sleep deprivation, and freezing temperatures, were completely legal. Abu Ghraib was the direct result of these memos. Following the investigation, 11 low-ranking soldiers were convicted. Most served less than 3 years in prison. Specialist Lindy England, the soldier pictured holding the leash, served just 21 months. Brigadier General Janis Karpinski was demoted, but the true architects of the program, the Pentagon lawyers, the high-ranking generals, and the CIA officials who wrote and authorized the policies, were never charged. All subsequent civil rights lawsuits were dismissed, and no high-ranking official ever went to trial. Haditha Massacre. On the 19th of November 2005 in the city of Haditha, Iraq, a convoy of US Marines is struck by an improvised explosive device, instantly killing Lance Corporal Miguel Terrazas. In retaliation, the Marines entered nearby homes. They went room to room, executing 24 unarmed Iraqi civilians. Among the dead were 7 children. The military immediately released a press statement claiming the civilians were killed by the initial roadside bomb and that the Marines only fired back at active attackers. But a Time magazine investigation exposed the lie, forcing the military to launch an internal probe. 8 Marines were initially charged in connection with the massacre. However, 6 had their charges completely dismissed, and 1 was fully acquitted. The squad leader, Staff Sergeant Frank Woodrick, pleaded guilty to a single count of simple dereliction of duty. He served 0 days in prison, receiving only a minor demotion and a temporary pay cut. The families of the victims were paid $2,500 per death, and the case was permanently closed. Kunduz Hospital Airstrike. On October 3, 2015, in the city of Kunduz in Afghanistan, Afghan forces and US Special Operations troops are engaged in heavy street fighting to reclaim the city from the Taliban. Nearby, a Doctors Without Borders trauma hospital is filled with staff and patients. The medical charity had repeatedly shared the exact GPS coordinates of the hospital with all warring parties. It was clearly marked as a protected humanitarian site, but at 2:08 a.m., a USA C-130 gunship zeroed in on the hospital. For 30 straight minutes, the gunship circled overhead, firing heavy 105mm artillery shells and 40mm cannons directly into the main building. The hospital was completely destroyed. 42 people, including doctors, nurses, and patients, were trapped in their beds and lost their lives in the bombardment. During the bombardment, panicked hospital staff made frantic phone calls directly to US military officials in Washington, asking them to stop, but the calls were ignored. The Pentagon later claimed the strike was a tragic mistake. They argued that Afghan forces had requested the airstrike, and the crew mistakenly believed the hospital was a Taliban-controlled compound. But the coordinates were active in the gunship's tracking systems. Doctors Without Borders openly declared the strike a war crime and demanded an independent international investigation. The US government blocked it. Instead, 16 service members received minor administrative punishments such as letters of reprimand. No one was court-martialed, no one faced criminal charges, and the hospital was never rebuilt. The Geneva Conventions aren't failing because they are old. They are failing because the Pentagon has designed 3 systemic legal shields to completely bypass them. Shield 1 is the doctrine of necessity. Whenever US forces kill large numbers of civilians, lawyers invoke military necessity. Under this rule, civilian deaths are reclassified as unavoidable collateral damage if the operation targeted a legitimate military goal. Shield 2 is the preference for administrative justice. When soldiers commit atrocities, military commanders often use internal administrative punishments, like demotions, letters of reprimand, or Article 15S. This keeps the incidents completely out of federal criminal courts, ensuring the public never sees a real trial. Shield 3 is the jurisdictional mode. In 2002, the US passed the American Service Members Protection Act, commonly known as the Hague Invasion Act. This federal law explicitly authorizes the US president to use military force to invade the Netherlands to liberate any American soldier detained by the International Criminal Court. If you want us to map the dark histories the headlines try to hide, hit subscribe and leave a comment with any historical cover-up or mystery you want us to discover next. Don't worry, we are reading every comment.